Hello, I'm Amanda Prowse,
I'm Josiah Hartley.
and we have co-written The Boy Between. There's a picture of the cover. The book comes out later this year. It's a story of Josh's descent into depression to the point where he tried to take his own life. I'm Josh's mum, and it's my story too, about everything I do to try and keep Josh here on the planet and what it's like to have severe depression come and live in your house. Just a very ordinary family, and it really knocked us for six. We have loads of lovely questions that people have sent in. Thank you so much, and thank you to the bookseller for hosting this Q&A. We're going to try and get through as many as we can, and those we don't, I apologise in advance. The first is from Joe Edgerton, who says, how do you both get through the thoughts of will this ever happen again? I think Joe means your sort of slide maybe towards wanting to take your own life, Josh. I think those thoughts never go away for me, Joe. I don't really cope with it. I worry about it, I fret about it. I don't feel quite so panic-stricken as I did in the beginning, because I think I've learnt a lot through writing the book about what I can and what I should do if we find ourselves sliding into that situation when Josh goes into a particularly dark place. But I don't think those thoughts or that worry will ever go away. If he's a second late in returning home, or doesn't answer a text, or doesn't answer the front door, my mind runs riot, and I suspect it always will. There's a second part to the question, and Joe says, Josh, would you now ask for help if you think you're going into a low, and do you have coping mechanisms in place?
Absolutely. I now know I am, capable of asking for help. I know there's help there, which I don't think is true a few years ago.
What changed, do you think?
Just open, honest discussion. Which was for you, and for the coping mechanisms, absolutely. I think for having a particularly bad period, you have to take it almost minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day. Just get through it, because you can and will get through it. Just being here, staying on Earth for 1 hour, it can be an achievement at times, depending on how low you are. And to just take it literally minute by minute if you're in a sort of almost crisis period. So I think that's, a coping mechanism.
I hope I'm not breaking confidence when I say Josh had a particularly bad day today. So, yeah, I'm just really pleased he's here to answer these questions. And we'll get through it, eh? The second question is from Wrexham Libraries. Oh, lovely Wrexham Library, one of my favourite places. Who would you like to narrate your book if it became an audiobook? Or would you want to narrate it yourselves?
Well, it is an audiobook, and we are both narrating it, which is good. I think it adds an extra layer of authenticity to it. I mean, it's our story, it's my story. It wouldn't be right for anyone else to read it, I don't think. But if I had to pick, I'm going to get Stephen Fry. Stephen
Fry, good choice. I would probably go Michelle Obama.
Oh, very good choice.
I love her voice. But yeah, I think you're right, Josh. I think it's such an emotional book, and it's our words and our feelings on the page. It would feel very weird hearing someone else voice them. So I hope we've done a good job. I think we have. And another question from Wrexham Libraries. 2. Hi Amanda and Josiah. Was writing this book cathartic for you both?
Absolutely. So writing it sort of gave me able to look at my depression through sort of a different lens, sort of being able to view it from a different perspective. I think, it was a hugely emotionally dredging experience writing this book. Sort of brought up a lot of my darkest memories, and sort of let them reconsolidate a bit, actually, and discussing everything. And it's fair to say we discussed everything, and that was obviously incredibly hard, but
I think also, Josh, it was one of those things that it was cathartic in that we decided not to write a sanitized version of the truth. We thought if we're going to do it, then we need to write it in the most raw, honest and full account that we can. So we haven't shied away from anything. I don't think, for example, I always come out of it very well. I come across as quite naive, very emotional, trapped in this pattern of behaviour that wasn't really helping Josh, that I couldn't see. But I've learnt from it, as I say, because it's very much warts and all, but I think that's how we've learnt from it, isn't it? I think it's been really, really useful. And actually, the level of conversation we should have had years ago. Next question now.
Whose idea was it to write the book?
And that's from Andy Bunting. Thanks, Andy. Neither of ours, actually, fair to say. Josh was in a particularly dark place and he'd put a wall up, and he was just taken to his bed. He didn't get up, and he was very removed from everyday life, and I didn't know what to do next. And we tried everything. I mean, you know, everything to try and break through that armour and make his life better. And I decided to send him an email, as daft as that sounds. Somehow it's easier to write things down, I find. And I wrote him an email and I said, Josh, we don't know what to do to help you. We don't know what to do next. We're running out of ideas. Can you help us? We were sort of at our wit's end. And Josh said, look, if I'm having a low time, come into my room, turn my duvet over, open my bedroom window, bring me a glass of water, maybe sit and chat to me for a bit. And much to my shame, I said, oh, what? Like you were ill? And Josh said, he said, I am ill, Mum. And I think that was the first time I fully understood that having depression was just the same as having any other long-term illness, debilitating illness. And through the medium of swapping those emails, it really started to change my understanding of what he was going through. And before we knew it, we had 20,000 words, wasn't it? My editor, my agent, now our agent, came to the house to talk about another book I was writing and said, how's Joshy? Everyone loves Josh. And I showed her our emails, and they both sort of said, wow, this is a book. I felt very, very anxious about writing it down and putting it in stone forever, because I didn't want Josh to be that man, that boy who tried to kill himself, that boy with depression. And Jim, what you said to me?
Mm-hmm. Well, the unfortunate truth is I am that boy.
Yeah. And that was it. That sort of thought, well, yeah, you are. So let's write it down and see if we can get some good come out of it. And I hope we will. Next question, Joshy.
Sam Reed, what was it like to go from writing fiction to writing about your own life, especially with such a personal topic?
Difficult. It was very difficult. I thought writing was writing, just get the words down and it'll all kind of be fine. Wasn't the case. It was a much more thought-provoking, emotionally draining process, particularly as you say, because it was such a personal topic. And I was constantly, I'd fall into bed exhausted and feeling hollow inside, like I'd had to really dig deep and show someone my journal when the things written about me maybe weren't that favourable. I found it very, very tough, exhausting. The hardest book I've ever written, but definitely the book that I am proudest of, I would say. Next question, should I do that one, Josh?
Yeah.
Is from Phoebe Wyatt. Josiah, do you have any plans to write anything else in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to say too much, but yeah.
You are writing, aren't you?
Yeah. No, I've started.
And the next question is from Alice. Alice, OK Books. What was the single most challenging thing about writing the book together? Caroline Carpenter has also said, what was it like writing a book with your son and vice versa? So Caroline and Alice, we could kind of answer those together. What was the most challenging thing, Josh, for you?
Well, for several things actually, but it was the first thing I've ever written, and I am, as it says in the book, I'm severely dyslexic, so it was just the whole new to the writing process really. Mandy's written over 20 books and is, I think, fairly set in stone the way you write. You wake up at 6 a.m, you tap away for 12 hours, and that's it. For me, I'd rather write in shorter, more punchy episodes, and I think that different style took a while to blend. And also, I think
say there was a little bit of tension.
I think it's fair to say we at least initially started writing this book by asking very difficult questions to each other, some we didn't always like the answers to, and that can be very emotionally draining experience. So that's probably it. So a blending of writing styles, and obviously on such a dark and difficult topic.
Yeah. I was torn between wanting to write the best possible book I could, which meant the most honest, but also protecting my son's fragile mental state. I was sort of walking that tightrope between, do I want to really talk about what it's like to have a severe depression living in every room of your house? Because it has a physical weight. It can be quite unpleasant. I mean, and that's just what we're going through, which doesn't even touch on what Josh has to live with. But I was very conscious of sort of handling his mental health as well. So I found it very challenging, but we got there.
Well, I think when we initially sat down, and we need to make it as honest and open as possible. And I think I was able to do that because if it manages to help one sufferer with depression, it was worth it. It's a book I'd have liked to have read at some of my darkest days. So I think honestly, if it helps one person, then it's all worth it for me.
Yeah.
And I think it has the potential to do that.
Because I think there's so many people like you, Josh, you know. Who sort of...
Yeah, the unfortunate truth is it's very common nowadays to have depression. And one of its sneakiest tricks is making you feel like you're the only one who's suffered in this way. When in reality, the unfortunate truth is there's probably multiple people on your street suffering.
Next question from Caroline Sanderson. Caro says, I read a lot of memoirs, and while I recognise it's important to be absolutely honest about painful experiences, as a reader, I do have a need for both light and shade. Did you feel this as a writer too? That's a good question.
Absolutely. I think partly having the alternate chapters in both of our voices really helps with that. I think we have there's a tonal shift between each chapter. I'm more blunt, I think it's fair to say.
And a bit sweary.
And I think you're more, emotionally driven.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
more.
Well, it's my child I'm talking about. It's going to be emotional for me.
Yeah, of course. I think there is humour in it as well. It's certainly not a gloom and doom fest. There are dark points, obviously.
I think it's uplifting as well. I mean,
ultimately uplifting, yeah, for sure.
And hopeful. I mean, I think you have messages of hope in it, don't you? Really?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. And funnily enough, you talk about the light and the shade. That's a reoccurring theme in the book. Wasn't it for you, Josie?
I'll read the next one out first.
Good point.
Caroline Carpenter and Joanna Williams and Stephen Hill both all asked, how did you come to the title The Boy Between? And that was in the book. I explain how over time the colour in the world was drained until only grayscale remained. So it's partly the boy between light and dark, colour and grayscale, between life and death, unfortunately, in many ways. That's what it means to me anyway. What about?
I think absolutely that, but also between boyhood and becoming a man, it's between happy and sad. It's almost very often like Josh is in limbo. He's stuck in the middle of this, this journey. How do you move forward when your mind is holding you back? So he's between a lot of things in every sense. So yeah, I love the title actually. I think it's really good. The next question is Karen Kenneby, who says, how much do you think a mother can be the one to help an adult son when peer pressure is so strong? It's a very good point. I don't think it necessarily needs to be the mother who helps the son. I think they just need, any sufferer needs one person who is the ultimate listener, which I've learnt to be. I wasn't, but I think I'm getting better at it. One person who isn't going to judge, whose love is truly unconditional, because people with depression are quite hard to live with. I've said this already, I've said it in the book. It's when someone is being at their most unpleasant, closed down, frightened, aggressive mentally, or just absolutely closed off. That's when you have to really, really up your ante and love them even more, because it's hard. And I think a lot of people's instinct would be to walk away because it is too hard. So I think a mother is perfectly positioned to do that because we already love them unconditionally, and so it makes it easy for me to support Josh in that way. Next question from Molly Flatt. Molly says, recent articles and books have highlighted the problem of toxic masculinity. Is this something Josiah has struggled with, and how does he think we can help shift the narrative of what it means to be a man in society today? That's a good question, Molly.
Yeah, absolutely something I have struggled with. I think not feeling able to come forward and ask for help or truly tell people how you feel is how it's affected me the most. And I think as a society, the only way we can move past this is just honest and open discussion about male mental health.
I think your book will go a long way to do that, Josh, because I think you're very open in talking about how you cry, how distressed you feel, and how you felt you were going to be judged by saying that you were struggling. I hope
so.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's not the case now, is it?
It is very honest and open book, so I think
also you would now ask for help, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would, which I didn't think I was capable of a few years ago.
But I guess leading by example, isn't it? Saying it is okay to ask for help. In fact, it's imperative. talk to someone.
It is, you know, men hurt, we cry. It's
All men.
yeah, of course.
Okay, the next question is from Kirstine Bowen, who says, how do your writing styles differ in the book? We touched on it a
Sort of
little
touched
bit.
on this already, yeah. But it is, you know, I would describe it as overly emotional.
Or just emotional enough.
And I think it's fair to say I'm quite blunt in my writing style.
I had noticed.
Um,
They're very different, aren't they, actually, which is interesting because our language is quite similar, but our style is very different. Yeah. I think people like the different tones. I think that's one of the lot of feedback we've had.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
it's,
Next question from Franny Mitch. Amanda, writing this book and going through the heartache with Josiah, has it changed your relationship with him? And if so, how?
That's a good question. Yes, I think it has changed our relationship. I think for a start, there is nothing left unsaid, which is quite lovely. And I think I'm now much more able to say whatever I'm thinking and not have to sugarcoat it or think, is it appropriate? I now know that the way to keep Josh here, the way to stop Josh wanting to take his life, is to ask him very direct questions as and when appropriate, and not be afraid of broaching a topic because I worry it might be the thing that pushes him over the edge. So yes, it has changed our relationship for the better. It's been a bit like ripping off a band-aid, and I wish we'd done it years ago. I feel like I know Josh a lot better, and I feel like I've learned a lot about how I can and should respond to his dark days. So I would say, has it changed our relationship, would you say, Josh?
Yeah, I think able to be more honest and open.
I think you were hiding a lot for a lot of years, you know, saying everything was fine. Part of asking for help, isn't it, really, that?
Question from Elizabeth Gunson. My question would be, do you manage to keep lines of communication open between you at all times? Life can get in the way at times, can't it?
No, we don't. Not really. We should be better at it. But you're absolutely right. It's real life. So I might not see Josh because he's out with his friends, or I'm working, or I'm away, or, you know, we're in different parts of the house doing different things. And, you know, I'm busy cooking, he's off with the dogs, whatever it might be. I'd like to say, yes, we sit and talk every day as like a sense check, as like a sort of mental rebalancing. But of course we don't, because you don't, do you? We probably should, and we're a lot better than we were. And nothing has reached crisis point, touch wood, and thank you so far. And I hope that's always the case. I think the main difference is I know that as and when we need to talk, we can. Whereas before, I would ask Josh if he wanted to talk or needed to, and he would say no, even if he did. And I also would be too afraid of broaching subjects. So I feel we're better. Are we perfect? Not really, no. This question from Tracy Greaves. Can I ask Josiah if he felt under pressure to achieve at uni, and if that contributed to his mental health? And would he have any advice for new students starting out at uni on their own?
Yeah, absolutely. Massively contributes to my mental health. I didn't see any other paths. For me, it was, you know, get into uni, do well at uni, and then find a job. I think there was no other paths. I didn't see at the time anyway. So massively, it felt like it was the be all and end all. I had to achieve at uni, which seems a bit silly saying that now. Of course, you know, of course I had options, and I think we both hate the term dropping out. It feels like such a failure when it doesn't have to be.
There's no other walk of life, is there, where if you change your mind or change your course, it can be seen as something really positive. But if you leave university, you're called a dropout. I absolutely hate the term, I must admit. I think there is a lot of pressure on young people generally, isn't there, for a number of reasons.
My advice for new students would be, it just doesn't matter what anyone else is up to. What your uni reality might be very different to what you think uni is going to be like before you get there.
Because I think you're told it's going to be the best time of your life, and you expect it to be like the movies.
So what if it's not? That's added pressure. You know, if it's not the best time of your life, even a very normal time could feel bad in comparison. Question from Trish Hills. Where did you find the strength to write the book?
I think we both felt it was an important thing to do. Not only in terms of getting a book out that we think will help other people. I mean, it will certainly help mums and carers and friends like me who really don't know what way to turn or what the best course of action is to take when there's someone you love suffering with depression. But also, I think we found it was the very best thing we could do for ourselves, to really get to learn about the illness from each other's perspective, and how we can both work together to make sure that Josh stays here on the planet, because every day that he's here, every week that he battles his illness, and every month he survives is a win.
I think I personally found the strength to write this novel, but I think if it helps one person like me, it's worth it. It's a book I'd have liked to have read when I was at my darkest points. So I think if it can help one other person, it was worth it. I think that's what mentally kept me going through the writing process. Thank you very much for all your questions. Really appreciate them. Boy Between out November 1st.